Welcome to ONS Energy Talks. My name is Ingrid Sølvberg and I am the Program Director of the ONS Foundation. Maximizing value from the Norwegian oil and gas activity is a primary objective of the Norwegian Petroleum Directorate. Now, we're in a situation with very volatile energy markets. We have an industry which are being financially challenged due to the low prices. And this might influence the optimal resource management and the maximizing of value from the Norwegian oil and gas activity. And we want to explore into this. Today we have with us Director General of the Norwegian Petroleum Directorate, Ingrid Sølvberg. She wants to help us to shed light on the situation that we have on the Norwegian continental shelf today, the current activity, and what we expect going forward. Ingrid, welcome. We are so glad to have you with us.
Thank you. I appreciate being here with you.
We are in a situation that we never thought we will ever come into. And could you start by explaining to us how the situation in the Norwegian continental shelf are, like as you see it?
Well, the situation is, of course, characterized by the oil price collapse and the measures taken to reduce the spread of the coronavirus. And they both affect the activity level in the petroleum industry, and the extent of these effects will depend, of course, on how long the situation lasts. We see that the industry has initiated a number of measures and also announced cost cuts, reducing investments and operating costs. And as we see it, this affects four categories of activity. First of all, we have seen an instant reduction in the exploration activity, both with respect to wells and seismic activity. Second, we also see that there has been an effect on sanctioned field development projects, but to a lesser extent. They seem to continue with some delays, mainly due to restrictions from the COVID-19 or coronavirus spread and measures taken to reduce this at construction sites. So a slightly maybe reduced capacity at some construction sites. The third category we are more concerned about, that is the unsanctioned development projects, which seem to be postponed. As we see it, there is a large number of early phase projects under evaluation on the Norwegian continental shelf. And the companies also see a lot of possibilities and economically interesting projects. But even though many of them are regarded as medium to small in size. But this drop in oil price has introduced a lot of uncertainty to all these unsanctioned projects, and the companies seem more reluctant to make investment decisions and reluctant to invest. And then it is the fourth category, which is the production itself. So far, this looks quite good. We don't see that the situation has had any major influence on the production level so far. But we know that tough decisions are being made, among other things, to reduce offshore manning, and a number of planned projects and non-critical maintenance work on the fields has been postponed. We also register that drilling of some production wells may be postponed, and these measures could have a long-term impact on the production from the shelf.
You paint a picture of course, of less profit due to the prices. Projects are being delayed and affecting also the kind of the new projects that you were supposed to come. But could you elaborate a little bit on how you see the different companies and how this is impacting the different players at the Norwegian continental, both of the oil and gas company, but also a little bit on the service sector?
I think, of course, what we see is as I said, that the companies are holding back on investments and also on the operating costs. So some of the companies have notified layoffs, as we know, and they are looking into reducing manning further. And for obvious reasons, of course, if the companies don't make any investment decisions, we are particularly concerned about having a viable supply industry in the longer term, also when we are out of this tunnel. So what we urge is the companies, the oil and gas companies, to not lose sight of the long term when making decisions today. We need the supply industry. We have spent years to build it up. It's a world-leading supply industry, technologically very strong, but it doesn't take very long to tear it down. So this is maybe one of our major concerns.
That's a huge impact on employment rates and activity. So I very much agree with that's important. But let's jump to the Norwegian government, because we've seen a dramatic demand in demand shock in the oil market due to the Corona crisis, and we also saw the OPEC Plus countries discussing for a couple of weeks before they agreed on a production cut. And the Norwegian government, it's a historical deal because the Norwegian government also decided to join in and do their part. How the production cuts are decided, but how is it influencing the activity on the Norwegian continental shelf today or in the future?
Yeah, I think it's important to remember the reason behind the production regulation. It is to contribute to a quicker stabilization of the oil market, and than the market mechanisms alone can provide. So a quicker stabilization of the oil markets is important for the sake of good resource management and the Norwegian economy in the longer term. So this is important to remember. It's the fourth time in history, actually, that the Norwegian authorities have decided to regulate oil production from the Norwegian continental shelf. As you said, the production regulation or production cuts have been decided. It is decided to reduce oil production from the shelf by 250,000 barrels per day in June, and further 134,000 barrels of oil per day on an average for the second half of this year. On Friday last week, revised production permits were issued to 48 fields on the Norwegian continental shelf, which will be affected by this production regulation. And I could also maybe say that there are three criteria that exempt a field from being subject for regulation. First of all, the production is not regulated on gas and condensate fields, which do not produce oil from own oil zones. Second, cross-border fields are exempted. And third, oil fields with reported final Caesar production by the end of 2022 are exempted. And when talking about the long-term effects, the production cuts are done in accordance with principles of safe and prudent resource management. So the long-term perspective here is the important view from the authorities when doing this.
So what you're saying is that 48 fields are affected of this. It's kind of a Norwegian, we call it dugnad. It's a common effort to help Norway to do their parts to help stabilizing the oil market. And moving from that, the Norwegian government has proposed measures to help mitigate the current situation, and we'll not go into the details in that. But could you say something about what are your main concerns for the industry right now, and what do you hope these packages will help the industry?
I could say that we are following, of course, the situation closely from the Norwegian Petroleum Directorate side, and we are working to understand the potential consequences of the postponements and cancellations. In particular, with respect to what we call time-critical resources. and that is resources where postponements could result in lost and not only deferred production. So we are concerned that the industry may take decisions which have negative long-term effects for the resource management. We also want to see that the companies consider the balance between their own cash flow and the crucial need for a viable supply industry, as I already mentioned. And thirdly, we are concerned that a significant fall in the activity could have a lot to say for future recruitment to the Norwegian petroleum industry. So that is kind of the concern side of things. When it comes to the proposed package, which you're mentioning, let me first just say that we, as the Petroleum Directorate and Resource Manager, as a public agency, we can't comment on the structure and details in the proposed package. But what we do is we register that the industry has asked for assistance from the authorities to improve the challenging liquidity situation. And we must, as everyone else, adhere to whatever the final package includes. This is politics, and we're not into politics. But with that said, I think the most important with the package is, as we see it, is that it stimulates activity in the petroleum industry. So with the low oil prices, as I have said, the planned projects in an early phase may be postponed, and that will, in time, affect production from the shelf. So I think maybe that's.
So I of course I understand that you're not into politics, so we can leave that for the politicians. But and you mentioned that taking care of the time-critical resources is one of your priorities, and being concerned about kind of the situation in the service sector. But what would you describe your priorities these days and going into the rest of the year?
I've mentioned some issues related to that, but I think talking about our main priorities, I think they will be stable. We will go steady on what is our top priorities, also in challenging times. So I think first, we will continue to work to secure profitable production, also when the oil prices are low. Second, we will maintain a long-term view, and we will remind the industry to retain this long-term view and make sure that we execute measures that improve recovery and develop discoveries. Also, but maybe in this time with particular attention to time-critical resources. And third, which is also very important, is to maintain the license round system.
Often one of the things that happens, I mean, we're in a cyclical industry, so we've experienced that oil price has gone down before. And one of the first things that's happening is that it affects the exploration activity, the seismic activity. How would you describe the exploration outlook from your point of view?
Maybe just a general remark first on that. From previous downturns, we know that a lower oil price leads to reduced capital budgets, of course. And then compared to projects in a construction phase, exploration expenditures generally offer more near-term flexibility and are therefore seen as more low-hanging fruit to make cuts in. But it is very important to bear in mind that continued exploration lays the foundation for future production and therefore requires a long-term view. So the industry has made some interesting discoveries so far this year, and making discoveries always stimulates interest for exploration and future activity. So what we see now is that several exploration wells have been postponed, most of them to 2021. mainly due to operational issues linked to the coronavirus, but some are also due to delayed rigs. Most of these postponement decisions were taken in March. So as of now, we expect about 35 exploration wells or this year. And that is compared to an expectation of around 50 exploration wells at the start of this year. So, but having said that, 35 is actually a quite high number. So when it comes to next year, we will have to see because the companies are going through their budgets now during the summer, and we'll look into the exploration programs for next year then.
I'll just have to ask you, because you mentioned the revised budgets is coming later this year. But I just, before we go there, I have to ask you, I understand there came out some good news now regarding seabed mining and some new exploration work there. Could you comment on how you see these opportunities that at least comes out in these difficult times?
Yeah, well, this is very exciting. We are very excited, and it's and our Prime Minister Erna Solberg, she revealed on Monday this week that the government proposes additional funding of 70 million Norwegian kroners in the revised national budget, targeted for detailed mapping of seabed minerals this year. So together with the announced startup of the opening process, this is, I would say, a historic moment for seabed minerals in Norway. Working with seabed minerals is one of the NPD's tasks, in addition to resource management of oil and gas. And we are proud to have been instrumental in order to get where we are today. We started working on seabed minerals already in 2011 together with the University in Bergen. We have contributed with important input to the law on seabed minerals, which came into effect in 2019. And we also, in 2018 and 2019, executed seabed mapping and sampling operations in the deep water areas of the Norwegian Sea. And we found accumulations of seabed minerals, and where preliminary analysis show high concentration of both copper, zinc, and cobalt, which may prove interesting in an economic perspective. So this is very exciting.
I feel like I get very excited myself, because hearing about opportunities, there is so much talk about crisis and challenges, but so we need some opportunities. I'm glad to hear that. We need to end by talking about a little bit about the employment, because how do you think we will what we're seeing now, how it will influence the job market that we were in?
All the postponement of exploration activity, potential development projects, and operations and maintenance work will, as we have talked about, affect jobs and could have a dramatic effect for the supply industry. And staff reductions in this area could mean that highly qualified personnel and experts, which are not easily replaced, that has to be emphasized, they may find work in other industries. So this is where the oil companies must find a balance between considerations towards their own cash flow with the need for a viable supply industry. And also this drop in activity could also have a serious effect on the future recruitment to the industry.
I need to ask you in the end. I mean, you talked about the tunnel. So do you see a light in the end of this tunnel, and where do you think it will hit us first?
Yeah, well, what we're seeing is a situation in a constant flux in a way. That's why it's difficult to have an overview of the effects of what is happening in the industry right now. Even though I would say we do see a quite high activity on the Norwegian continental shelf, this is a very serious and demanding situation. But on the other hand, the industry has been through very rough times before. Today, I would say we see a society which is on the path towards a more normal situation. The measures are starting to ease up the corona measures which have taken place. But I do think we might see a pre and post-corona situation. I'm quite sure we will see a increase in the future demand for fuels, and then also a stabilization of the oil market, which will recover over time. So I think maybe even though this crisis has hit the petroleum industry maybe historically hard, we will manage to recover again. I'm quite confident we will come through this maybe a little more wiser and a little more robust.
I'm glad to hear, Ingrid. You've told us a story that the Norwegian oil and gas production is going very well, that the oil and gas companies are concerned and delaying some projects, but you're not very concerned about the resource management if this ends in a reasonable time. And I am enthusiastic about hearing about the new opportunities in seabed mining and doing all the work that you will do there. And you were very concerned about this. We need to have a viable supply industry going forward. And I also want to take with us the optimistic about the future. This will we will overcome and and find good ways to go forward.
Yeah,
Ingrid, it was a great pleasure to having you with us. Thank you very much, and thank you to all the listeners of the ONS Energy Talk. Thank you.
Thank you for inviting me. Thank you very much.